This is Stephanie, also known as Midlife Artist and Watercolor Artiste. So if you've been following me on social media, then you know who I am. You're familiar with some of my work. If you're new to who I am and to my work, welcome. This is my inaugural premiere video for my Patreon and Locals accounts. So welcome and thank you for being the beginning group of my community. I am grateful. So thank you for joining me. This is my first video, and I'd like to introduce you to my mixed media collage painting, The Cowboy. I had decided on this subject as a matter of doing an icon of masculinity, but not just any masculinity. As you know, masculinity has had a negative connotation in recent years, and there have been wonderful men in my life. My dad, my husband, my sons, of whom I'm very proud and whom I love very much. And so I decided that the Cowboy was going to be my first in a series of icons of men to look up to and to admire. And so this is my series on admirable masculinity. And the first thing that I needed to do was come up with that concept, which I did. But I also needed to find out more about the cowboy and the characteristics besides the romance behind it, the romantic idea of the cowboy from the movies or from romance novels or things like that. So I did. I looked up cowboys who originated more in a Latin world beginnings, but really took up the pace in the South and in the Midwest. And they were cowhands. They were cattle drivers. They were hardworking. They were often low income. And the originating idea, the history of the cowboy really gets romanticized through entertainment venues, you know, writing and movies and the like. And so I didn't want to make it too romanticized. I did want to keep it true to history, but I didn't want to lose the romanticism of cowboys because, you know, as a woman, it's nice to think of cowboys in that way. So to me, it makes a great marrying of ideas, and so I wanted to incorporate that in my painting. And so I went ahead and decided to do collage as my base. So I went and created all these collage papers that you see here based on historical as well as having a little bit of fiction in there. Like over here to the underneath the 1866 piece that you see is a piece of collage paper that I hand wrote as if it was a burnt found letter from one sister to the other about a specific cowboy. So there's some handwriting of my own handwriting in this collage background. And then I wanted to have that as my base, but then I wanted to know how I was going to situate the cowboy. So I did a thumbnail in my sketchbook, which is right here. I have that sketchbook, and it's actually towards the end because I was towards the, so you see here. What I'd like to show you is how I decided to organize, you know, the light cream towards the center and the edges, and I needed to have antique blue in the top third of the sky. And so I was trying to organize how I wanted this to sit, but I knew I didn't want my cowboy to be dead center in the composition. That was a very deliberate decision, which I've already received criticism for, but you know what? It's what I decided on, and I'm okay with that. And so that was how I started with the concept, the creed, and the thumbnails. When I went to go ahead and set the collage papers, you have to do that with different materials, and I used a medium, a matte medium for canvassing, and so that is what I used for that. Let me see if I can get the collage to show up. So this is what it looked like when I was done setting it with that and allowing it to dry overnight. And so you can see all the papers, and they're very, very crisp. They're very easy to see. But again, this was going to be a background, and it's going to be covered in paint, but some of it was going to come through. That was the whole idea. I also wanted to have some texture. So you see the white here, and that is some textured material. I want to say not plaster. I can't remember the name of it right off the bat, but it brings a texture to it. So I was doing that on the canvas as well. Again, this was on a dry collage backing, and I wanted to bring some additional textures in there. At this point, it was time to, you can see the collage textures there now. I'm using transparent gesso and cream gesso from Matisse, and laying down gesso over the background. But at the same time, I didn't want to hide the collage paper. So as you'll see in this video, I'm laying it down, but then I'm taking a towel and I'm wiping some of it out, trying to make sure that some of those papers that I really wanted to keep and maintain to show through, to not be covered with the gesso or paint at that either. So in order to have paint to properly set on a canvas, you need to have gesso. And so this is what I was doing. And it was first time I ever did this. This is my first, I think it was also my first time-lapse video, if I'm not mistaken, with my phone. So a lot of firsts in this, by the way. So this is my first mixed media collage, my first time working with Matisse gesso, transparent gesso, colored gessos, my first time laying it down, wiping it out, laying it down, wiping it out. So it was, and doing the videoing. This is just my attempt at making sure I was doing that as well. And so I let that go. Trying to see if I've got, I don't know how long that goes, but you see that I lay it down. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my colored gesso. So I take antique blue, and at this point I'm going up to the top of the canvas, the top third, and I'm laying in an antique blue gesso, and it's coming out very opaque. And again, I had never worked with this gesso, and so I wasn't prepared, I don't think, as well as I could have been, to lay it down in the way I wanted. So it was a trial and error, and I felt like I was wiping it up, putting it back down, wiping it up, putting it back down, but it is a process like that. But the other thing you want to be careful of when you're working with collage papers is that you don't, gesso has texture, and it has almost like a sandy feel if you're not careful. And the more you rub, the more it rubs away at those collage papers. And this is something I learned after the fact. And I'm like, oh no, I lost some of my collage papers. And so I ended up realizing that I was rubbing too much. And so it was a learning process, and I've learned now how not to do that. I think maybe more water, a little bit more dilute, a little bit better placement of colored gesso, and when I'm using the transparent gesso, which has definitely got more texture to it, that I definitely do not rub that away. And then once I was done completing that portion, I went to putting in and blocking in the sunset colors using acrylic inks. And so I put the acrylic inks in there, and that was the first color And then I did a yellow ochre as well. You can see the blue gesso. Now this is acrylic ink that I'm laying down, kind of placing my sunset colors on it as well. And this was after the gesso had dried. This was another day. And so that laid the, and I did that as well with the burnt umber, raw sienna, acrylic inks that I had for the rest of the background. And so at this point, I wanted to get the cowboy laid out. And so there's my background where I had gotten the sky, the sunset laid in, and then in the distance was the rock formation landscape. And then the foreground is darker. It's a ranch southwestern feel. Again, you can see points in the background or the canvas where the papers come through, because certain words that I wanted to associate with a cowboy needed to come through, like he's standing on a characteristic of honesty. He is hard working around him and the like. So you don't see it, I don't think, too well in this picture, but I've already got a sketch down of where he's going to be. And then I came in, because the background was gesso, acrylic inks. I came in after it was dried and brought in the oils. Now what you're seeing here, the cowboy is oil painting. You can paint oil on top of acrylic, but you can't do that in reverse. So you can't do acrylic on top of oil. And of course, oil can only be painted on top of acrylic once the acrylic is thoroughly dried. So if you're going to try it, make sure you remember that acrylic first, totally dry, before you bring in oil. And once you bring in oil, you can't come back to acrylic. So make sure that your acrylic blocking in and elements are set. And then through here, you see I got now ropes coming in. I'm still working on his pants. His pants were a very big challenge for me because also the ropes in the background. I also didn't want to cover up some of the words. So it was a little tricky there. And you'll see further development of his vest and shirt. In addition to the boots, if you pay attention to the boots, you see the boots now have a little bit more development, the vest and shirt also being more developed. You see the shadow that is coming to play where he's standing. That's also being developed. Please be aware that I know there's two sources of light, but this is a mixed media collage. It has a certain realistic feel to it, but I also was making sure that we had a sunset, but I also had a stark light shining down on the cowboy, because I wanted to say something about how cowboys should be a focal point, good cowboys. Not renegades, not rogues, but good, hardworking, honest cowboys needed to have a spotlight as a role model for young boys, for young children that need a good father figure. The cowboy as an icon could truly be spotlighted. But also, I wanted to say it's the sun setting on that kind of character, that kind of icon, that type of man. And I hope that if the sun is setting, it rises again on the cowboy. And then this next shot, I really work on the vest and the shirt. If you can see here, this was the previous, looking at the vest and the shirt, and now here it is, further developed. Again, the shadowing at his feet, the foreground also as well. And then I'm developing the corners, darkening the corners to kind of give a camera angle type view of the whole scene. And then the finished product. And you can tell that my photography on my Cowboy depends upon what room I'm in. In this room where I'm recording, it's definitely got more earthy tones, browns, yellows, reds. Definitely has that cast on the painting when I'm taking pictures of it in here. The picture that you see here is when I took a picture of it out on my back porch with indirect sunlight with my Olympus camera, and the blues and the cool tones came out. So it depends upon where you take the photograph of this painting that it seems to resonate either warmth or coolness. And so anyway, that's kind of where I finished it anyway. What I'm happy to say is that recently, when Stephen Zapata, a YouTube artist that I like to follow and inspired by, because he's just very inspiring, he's also on the forefront of helping artists fight against AI model training theft in the scraping of internet materials. And he recently did a nightshade all night YouTube live stream, and they went all night, him and his partner there. And for those who donated to the fundraiser to the Nightshade tool to keep it free for artists, those who donated and submitted an artwork got a chance to have their artwork critiqued by Stephen Zapata live in the live stream. And here's a screenshot of when my Cowboy was critiqued, and I was grateful for it because he's got an eye, he's a teacher, he's got lots of experience, he's definitely more from the imagination artistry, where I'm more of the observing, creating art from observation. I'm working on my imagination, like this Cowboy composition was from what I was thinking. I did use a cowboy model for the figure of the cowboy, but the landscape and the composition are all from what was in my head. And so that, my friends, is how my Cowboy painting came to be. And I'd like to figure out what I would be doing next in my series for Admirable Masculinity. I'm thinking about a blacksmith. I'm thinking about maybe a firefighter. What other icons for men, masculine men, admirable men, father figure men, men that could be looked up to, wholesome men. What kind of icons would you say I should be looking at maybe painting next? And I know what I want to do last, but I'd like to know what you think I should try next. So with that, thank you for watching. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Please keep coming back to see what I have coming up next. I appreciate it. God bless.